I always gotta love that intro music that Restream provides for us at the beginning of every live interview that we do through them. But you know what? We'll be making a new intro video soon because we're not at church, we're at the DJ Sessions. And welcome back to another episode of the DJ Sessions Presents the Virtual Sessions, where we feature the best DJs, producers, and electronic music industry professionals from around the world. I'm your host, Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and my guest today, coming in from Los Angeles, California, over in the Valley, I believe it is John Tejada. Did I say that? Did I get that last name right?
Almost Tejada.
Tejada. I forgot to ask before pre-show, but Tejada. All right, John, thank you for coming on the DJ Sessions today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Darren.
Awesome. So you're based out of LA, and you've been around for a little bit, just a little bit. I believe I was reading, like 94 is when you started putting out music. And, you've seen a lot happening over the course of the electronic music industry. I mean, when I started listening to or even going out to electronic music nightclubs, it was very underground in Seattle, Washington. I mean, there were areas where it was blooming and blossoming, but it was kind of literally the club that I went to was called the Underground in Seattle when I first started, and that was 1992. So you've seen a lot happen over the last almost 30 years, and in that you created a label, Palette Recordings. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen in the change of electronic music over the course of 25 plus years.
Yeah, that's a lot to
It is.
put together, but I'll give it a try. Obviously, back in the day, it was all word of mouth, and I think the record shops were the sort of the big social places where you would hear about stuff and you'd see flyers as well as like going to other events, But that was kind of how you found out about stuff. I guess there were some, obviously there were some magazines in print. But that was essentially our universe for like information, where now everything is so instant and very global. But I think especially back then, like a lot of the city's individual scenes are very specific to that city. Like if you wanted to experience, name any city in their sort of upcoming scene, like you had to go to that place. Like New York, early 80s, like you couldn't get that anywhere else. You had to be there. And now, for better or worse, it's a little different. Like it's all sort of coming together globally, which is definitely a positive as well. So yeah, I mean, back then I think Seattle had a specific thing, and LA definitely did. And a lot of the things I was interested in would kind of sometimes come into town packaged on kind of like big tour events or something, or if an artist was like a little bit bigger and they had some openers. But I was always like really influenced, obviously, like early New York, then of course Chicago, Detroit, all this 80s stuff that kind of changed the world, and also the way sort of Europe embraced it and put it all together was also, especially in the early 90s, was a really big influence to me. So I kind of I was trying to find that here. And again, just because having limited resources, I didn't know everything that was going on. There were a lot of pioneers here doing their thing, but I was so kind of influenced by this global scene that sort of like mid 90s, I made that my focus. So in a way, I kind of started far away, and I started going to Europe in like 97. And it actually took me like a really long time to sort of bring what I was doing back here, because I would like play a big show somewhere across the pond, and I could still come home and play to an empty room, which was it was fine, because that's kind of, it's just, that's kind of how it was. But I think with the aid of all the social stuff and just everything kind of going global, like the event calendar in LA and in Seattle, I mean, in every kind of major US city now is pretty ram-packed with global DJs that initially you could only see in certain parts of the world. So it took me quite a bit of time to bring what I do back here and feel like I was part of the community. So in a way, that was kind of like a really great thing for me that I was starting to focus on, especially these days. I'm focusing very much to closer to home. So in a way, I guess to answer the question, I guess that's my own perspective on it. Is like it was harder for me to put the information together because I was getting it from the record stores mostly, I think. So that's something we kind of don't have now. I mean, we do, but there's like, in the 90s, certain DJs would own record shops and like you would get in with them, and especially, someone in a position myself, I would be lucky because they might like be put, I mean, all those shops would sell tons of music for producers. And that was a really major part of it. Another big difference, now you're kind of counting on PR and a bit of socials, and there's still bigger shops that push music. But I guess, yeah, talking about it, thinking about it out loud, that sort of community aspect has changed, because it was like a weekly thing to go meet up with everybody, and you could show them what you're working on, and they would like turn you on to new music, or a DJ might be in town and you might meet that person and be like, wow. So you'd make this connection, and then you might swap, gigs or production duties or remixes or something. So it was just this like big community, which now has gravitated towards everything online and socials. But there's positive negatives to each. But obviously, me being kind of back in the day, not as back in the day as a lot of people I look up to, but it just I do miss a lot of that. Just personal connection, just the simplicity of it. Um, So yeah, and it can feel a bit overwhelming these days, right? Because instead of just having like, I think a lot of early goals I had, even though I kind of like made this move to work with foreign companies, like I did live here, so my focus was local. But I think now it can be overwhelming because your focus almost has to be global initially. And I've seen some interviews lately with even like Dre from NWA and stuff where they were like, we were just trying to get our music in our neighborhood. We weren't even thinking, and they got these, and you hear it so much with so many artists. A lot of success stories from the 80s, Chicago guys, Detroit guys, everything. And it was like all of a sudden getting offers to go here and there. And it was the same for me to be asked to start going to Europe. So in a way, I always felt like nobody at home really actually knew what I did, which was fine. But yeah, now it's almost like music can, it's weird. Music can take so long to come out now if you're doing vinyl still, right? But if you're doing digital, it's kind of like instant. So there's this almost like this hyper pressure of releasing music very fast and making it hit globally. And like that seems pretty intense compared to pressing physical media and getting physical orders and letting that kind of grow. And the shops, which were such a huge support system, now it's kind of like, where's that support system? You're like, can DJs still break big tunes? Like, I think it's rarer now because you have so much music coming out every week, right? So
Yeah, and something when I was reading it on your bio, I realized you're only 4 months older than I am. And something I saw that there's a parallel with us. And you mentioned, Dre and these rappers, the hip hop artists and the artists that were just trying to break out in their local neighborhood. At that time in the 80s, all my friends were gravitating towards, the Guns N' Roses or the rock of the time. And I was gravitating towards hip hop music. I think one of the first tapes my mom had ever bought me was UTFO.
oh
I
yeah,
think it was the one with Roxanne on it.
I
You
just
know,
picked that album up again. I got a clean copy. I mean, that's a really underrated record, produced by
yeah,
Full Force. And Mixmaster
yes,
Ice was like
yeah,
I hear DJs talk about Mixmaster Ice a lot, and like that was some of the first like really serious cutting I heard back in. In fact, that was the first. It might have been the real Roxanne version was the first piece of vinyl I bought back then in '84. But yeah, it's funny. We probably have a lot of similarities there.
absolutely. And I'm sitting here going, what was I doing at the age of 12? Here, John is DJing events at the age of 12, and I mean, I would play records, 45s in my bedroom, but a lot for me was the cassette mixtape, and then I had always been on the dance floor side growing up. I was always on the dance floor. It wasn't until later on until I started doing a live streaming DJ show. I had friends in the nightclubs. I'd been in the nightlife environment for 30 years of my life. Well, I guess 32 years of my life, trying to sneak in when I was underage to clubs and things of that nature. But it wasn't until I started hosting the DJ show that I realized how much work actually went into DJing. The selection of music, finding the music. I knew it wasn't just about, oh, I'm just going to put this track on. I knew I'm just going to put this record on. I mean, the technique, how to use techniques, the vinyl versus digital comparison, the battle, or
Or just saving for those 1200s, like
yeah,
everybody
exactly.
started with like a crappy deck and it was like, oh, one day I'm going to get some 12s. And I think that's an interesting point as well about the differences between now and then. Like you wanted 1200s, you had to dig for vinyl. I mean, I remember DJs like covering labels, right?
Mhm.
Like it was very specific to some DJs to like, you don't play these tunes, these are my tunes.
Yeah.
Um, and also now these days, I get it from students quite a bit, which we can talk about later. But be like, hey, I want to get into DJing. I'm a producer. Like, how should I do it? So like, there was just one way to do it before, unless you were like doing something very out of the way, playing cassettes or reel to reels, right? But now it's like, oh, I think the last thought is like 1200s. It's like, do I do one of these apps or do I do it in one of these DAWs or like they get like CDJs or they get a controller thing? So like getting into stuff these days, even though it's like so accessible, it's like, whoa, man, like, that's a lot to think about just to have that fear of like, oh, I'm going to make the wrong option of how to be a DJ. It's like, so I guess you and me have this foundation of like, yeah, and just I remember I used to hang with these guys. It was very important to have like clean blends. They would like really criticize that. So I always like, even, I got to meet all these guys, like you were saying, when I was like 11, 12. I just fell into finding some interesting older guys that were like in the scene. It was great to have these guys around, or going to schools that went like kind of, whatever, K through 12. And the older kids were like breaking and DJing and stuff. So that I would be like, I need to hang with these guys. But yeah, so it's all these things from back then to now, like so many positives and advantages to modern technology, but also just so much uncertainty, right?
Well, and you mentioned something there where literally people would put tape over their vinyl so that other people couldn't bite their tracks. And I literally just had, well, it was about a year ago, one of my DJs, they were kind of mentoring a DJ, and that DJ started using some of the tracks that DJ they would play in their sets. And I'm like, if it's a vinyl world, I get it. But in a digital world, when Beatport puts a top track out there and it's accessed by millions, how do you claim ownership of that track? Or that's in my set and you can't
Yeah,
play that in your set. And
that's a bit of a weird one, but
you know,
people will get upset about anything. But yeah, I mean, if you're, I think with digital, you can still really dig for stuff. I mean, even though a lot of clubs aren't set up for vinyl, a lot of stuff I'll play is digitized vinyl, but a lot of it's not available digital. So I love like, my kind of proud moment is somebody being really into a track and they got their Shazam out, it's like no results, I'm like, yeah.
I was just gonna bring that up. I can't remember who the artist was. Maybe it was either Artie or Party Shirt or somebody I just had on the show recently. They had somebody was in the crowd doing an Instagram filming the person trying to Shazam, and then they sent it to the artist and said, "You're not going to find this track because it's not released anywhere yet. It's our own personal track." And just thought it was interesting. And again, technology making its way up. One thing that, and you've seen this happen, is speaking of technology, of how the dance floor mechanics have changed because of this. And having people be on the dance floor and doing this or this instead of just listening to the music. What has been your experience with that? Have you seen a shift in the dance floor dynamics, or more interaction in dynamics on the dance floor via technology, putting that smartphone into everyone's hand?
Well, I think that kind of calls me out because it's like if I notice more audiences just standing around, it's probably my fault, right? But I know that's not what you're saying. Well, I think even before our time, the DJs weren't this focal point of
Mhm.
being, it's like when I see Steve Albini talk about like the last thing I want to see is a guy standing just standing there, and I completely agree with it, and I sort of relish for this like possible resurgence of like getting the DJ out of the way, or like these classic some of these classic spots, the DJs would be like up top. And I remember Air in Tokyo used to be like that. I don't know if it's still running or it's like that, but that was really cool because the DJ's elevated and you don't have everybody just looking at them, I guess. And I think that's led to a lot of the big budget shows, big promoted artists who essentially, like, in order to now play a big slot at a festival, I mean, you kind of got to lip sync and be a cheerleader and do a whole thing, which, like, I get it. Like, there you got thousands of people just staring at you. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's a bummer because I would love these, and it still happens, these events, but it's few and far between where people will just be very focused in on music or an amazing sound system and just kind of get lost and dance. Like, I'm not a big dancer, but it is dance music. And I mean, it's great when a whole crowd just going for it, and just to have people standing around with their phones out. Like, I was making some comments to somebody I work with. They were posting these parties in Europe, and it's like, oh, it's a great crowd, but you got these guys, this phone in one hand, and there's a one-armed dance. And I'm like, what's up with the one-armed dance? He just goes, because the phone's in the other hand. And I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, as long as people are having fun, but it's kind of a bummer, Like, there are some clubs, these bigger clubs we hear of, where you come in and they put a sticker on your phone and there's no photography.
Mhm.
I just would hope that people want to be more in the moment, and like, and the sound systems were the main attraction, but people are there to capture. I mean, anywhere you go, if you go to, I don't know, whatever natural park or something, it's a bunch of people standing, and or a sporting event, like I'm into golf, and you go to one of these events and it's like nobody's watching the athlete. It's just like a sea of people with phones, and it's like, you could just like restream this later. Like, they're capturing it for you in much better quality. So I mean, it's just it's not really specific just to clubs and dance music, but it's just people not exactly living in the moment. So maybe at some point people will get tired of it. Like, it'll be this new resurgence of, I don't know, hashtag no phone or something,
Hashtag no phone.
and
Well,
people will be like, oh, right, like you can actually just do a thing. I don't know. We're just
yeah.
showing our age here, possibly. This probably,
Oh, no, you brought up a great
but I
point
mean,
there. You brought up a great point there because, back in the day in the club, only the photographer was allowed. One or two photographers maybe were able to come to the club and snap those pictures.
and who
You
else would
know,
have a camera?
and
Nobody,
nobody else would have it. Even if you had a disposable camera, you might pull it out and snap and get a picture. But where did that picture live?
Yeah,
And it's one instant in a shoebox underneath your bed.
yeah,
It didn't
yeah.
get shared. But I've heard DJs, performers saying now that everyone has a phone, they'll catch them in that off moment where they might be like, or they might be like, and oh, so and so was picking their nose on stage last night, when maybe they may have just been like rubbing it, and then that goes viral or something, or they get
Yeah.
caught and they're looking down like this, and there might be a somebody standing there. It looks like they're looking down and checking them out, but they're really just looking over. But the way the picture's aligned, and then it goes viral and it goes, oh, and how that can lead to issues as well. It's just very interesting how technology is part of it. When we did, there were some promoters here in Seattle that did what were called no signal parties, where you drop your phone off at the door and come in. And I think that really promoted a essence. I would love to do parties like that and give everyone little digital, disposable digital cameras that you turn in at the end of the night to get your phone back. And then we would process all the images and it'd be the instant. I think Beastie Boys did something like that, where they had a big concert in the round and they handed out like 40 camcorders to all the audience members. And then they took all the footage back and compiled it that was shot from audience members. This is well before cell phones even had video capability in them. But yeah, just the change in technology has been awesome. If there was something that you could see technology wise that you would want to come out on the market and be there but isn't there, what would that be? What could you see that device or that thing being that I wish they had this. I'm John. I wish they had this. Let's make it today and put it out there for DJs and producers. What would that be?
Oh man, I don't have a great answer for that. Yeah, just less things. I think to that example, it was like when you went to an amazing venue, like that would kind of be the biggest company involved, and now it's like there's really really big agencies and really big social media companies, and maybe the event is sponsored by something. So you have all these like larger entities that are focusing and hoping for content and spreading the word and just this organic everybody kind of picking up on whatever's being promoted. And I don't think there's really a way back from that, but I think um, that's just kind of where we're at. So I feel like uh, I guess I'm still on the last question, but yeah, just to remove that focal point and giving some alternative focal points for the audience, or I don't know, I guess it's just where we're at as far as some kind of tech that doesn't exist. Man, that's you'd think I'd have a lot of answers for that. um Man, I'm stumped by that one. What are some things that you've had in mind recently?
I mean, the one thing that I always loved to see was, obviously I've always been a first mover when it comes to technology. I started back in public access television back in 1992. So you got your digs on in early on, but because I think you started your label in 96, right?
Mhm.
Palette Records. And I got into the television side of things and was working in public access, and then moving into broadcast television, and then moving later on into podcasting, and then live streaming. And now we're getting into virtual reality and augmented reality with our brand and stuff. But the one thing that I did that I love to see, which kind of unfortunately, there was an unfortunate incident. This big thing happened in 2020, we don't need to talk about. But for years, I was telling people about using live streaming as a platform to reach a new audience. And I was also telling people about using QR codes back in 2010, and people are like, what is this QR code thing? And I would always get this once we moved over to Twitch. And even in 2018, people would say, why would I want to watch a live streaming DJ show online? That makes no sense to me. I would say, have you ever listened to the radio? You
Right.
listen to mixes online. I
What
mean,
if you could see the radio?
see the person and what they're doing, and you could interact with them with a chat room and make that happen. And watching that technology grow, and then watching in 2020, everyone jumps online.
Yeah, like they have to figure
I
it
mean,
out.
you
The
have to.
school we had to figure it out as a performer, and people were trying to make money. I always go back to this example. I don't know if you, I'm sure you remember, but Future Sound London at their peak were it was slower technology, but it was like live over ISDN, and they would beam them into these huge events. They were always at home transmitting that stuff, and it just seemed bananas. But because they were so popular, it worked for them.
Yeah.
And I always remember that example, and that was in '94, I believe, in '95, and I thought that was brilliant because like a lot of artists that I find super interesting. There's no way they're bringing their entire studio out, and like, what if you could see this live show and these. So I always thought that was a great example. So there were many times I brought up Future Sound of London when it came to these last couple of years, right? Because it was like, man, yeah, they were way ahead of the game on that. Weirdly enough, they didn't do I don't think any live streams during the last 2 years, but um, yeah. So I mean, especially being too young to go out or something, right? Like just to give that access to, again, with everything being global now, we're all connected. Like just be living in a remote place and wanting to be part of the scene. Like it's a great solution. I hope it doesn't just disappear now.
Yeah, well, my early predictions on, after doing this for so long in early 2020, I was like, yes, everyone's going to jump online. We saw podcasts. I think podcasts grew 2 to 3 times the amount of podcasters that were out there, and live streaming. Everyone jumped on live streaming. And I said, watch this. What's going to happen when things open back up? You're going to see a 60 to 80% decline in content creation and a 60 to 80% decline in content consumption. People will have PTSD from being at home all the time. And I don't want to be at home. People
Yeah.
have PTSD from watching 10 hours of shows online.
It is. Yeah, it's going one extreme to the other, but I think
And but if people, the thing I would love to see the shift happen, the technology I would love to see happen is making it easy for a smaller venue to drop a unit in there. You drop a box, you set up some cameras, and boom, we're ready to go to a station. Maybe it's a corporation that runs this. Maybe Twitch comes out with a kit, or somebody makes a kit that these clubs could start going in and saying, look, we're going to pay per view this event, and we're only going to pay per view it if we hit 95% capacity. Or if they could figure out how to dial it down so that I could block off a 200-mile radius around my nightclub. So that way I won't lose on alcohol sales, because people, I'll just watch it from home,
right.
or the other question is, if there's an artist and they're going to travel and they're going to play, say they're going to play Seattle, but they got a show in Portland the next night. Well, if the Portland people watch the show that was from Seattle, are they going to go out to it? So is the artist going to change up that set each time? Because some artists kind of play the same thing city to city to city, and if no one's recording, no one knows what's happening. So I think opening the doors to a pay-per-view model or a pay-per-view ticketing model is going to be huge for artists if they go down that route. Some might have just been so burnt out on the technology in the first place because they weren't ready to adapt the technology to their existing social workflows. That was the one thing that I always sat back and kind of said is, you have these followers, you have these Instagrams. Why aren't you doing it? Even if you did just a live streaming talk show or a behind the scenes production show, grab their email addresses. So then you can fire off message, say, here's advanced tickets, here's merchandise, here's my NFTs that I'm launching, all that kind of fun stuff. If there was, it still is kind of a few different moving parts that haven't been brought together. But if somebody could bring it in and dial it together and make the moving parts happen in a box that would get venues on board with wanting to do it. And then in writers, obviously a lot of writers say, you can't record my set, you can't stream my set, which makes sense. But if that could start to be put into the negotiations of the writer, that if you're going to live stream, if you're going to do this, we want this kind of percentage, or in this, every one of our shows, we're going to start promoting shows and doing shows here in the near future. And I'm going to negotiate and say, hey, we want to live stream your show. And what's that cut going to look like? And start having those discussions. Now, we're not making millions of dollars, but that is revenue that's left on the table if you look at it. Like, hey, you may be streaming live here out of LA, but you might have people in Germany and Japan and Austria and Australia that want to see that set. And if you're streaming each of those sets live while you're on tour and you're not going to go international that year, why not get some residual tickets off of that? And maybe the ticket purchase comes with a merchandise, or merch, or a NFT that comes with that you can only buy online and get. I don't know, something. And there could be a limited amount of viewing audience too. It could be, we're only selling 100 tickets per event to watch this stream live. And you can do different tiers and have VIP chatting. It's all coming. It's there. But that would be the technology that I'd love to see. It would be something that's a small, simple solution, pop up, press button solution that's easy to go into. But you mentioned that you have students, and you were talking about teaching classes and figuring all this out in the beginning. You teach, and I don't know if this is the only class you teach, but you teach the Advanced Electronic Music Production class at Cal Arts. How long have you been doing that for?
I'm about to start I'm 3.5 years in. So okay. There's 2 classes in the spring I teach and 1 in the fall. So yeah, I got brought into that, and it's a great thing that sort of takes me out of my zone and gets me to prep things, and I meet tons of super talented faculty and students. So it's a whole new addition to my life, which has been really, really interesting.
And is that part of it? Is that part of an overall program, like a required class as part of a program, or just I know at some colleges, some programs, they teach like certificate programs or engineering degree program, 4-year degree programs. Is that one of those kind of classes that a student has to take, or is?
Let's see. I think so. It's not a required course. My spring courses are optional. I think 1 or 2 fall into a category of like, you need to at least take one of these, right? So I'm kind of in a pool of required classes, but you don't exactly have to take mine. What was I going to tell you about it? I can't remember now.
What do you focus on any particular DAW, or is it a range of DAWs?
Yeah, that's the thing. I just want to kind of encourage creativity. So a lot of the students will use Ableton, which I think is expected, but some use all kinds of different things. So like I myself, just to keep things interesting, I think I use 5 different DAWs. And I just kind of swap around, whoever's got a new interesting thing, I'll check it out. And they all kind of, in a way, they do the same thing, but they all kind of inspire you to work a little bit differently. So I make it pretty clear that like, because sometimes there'll be a student that just is only using hardware. I'm like, that's great. Like, this is not like tool specific, but the important part is like all of these concepts. You'll be able to use them, whatever you're using, and hopefully like they're helpful to your creative flow. So yeah, it's all very non-specific.
I remember when I was working for Apple, I became one of the first. I became one of 300 people in the world that was a trainer that could train people. I trained to train people how to train. I was train the trainer basically.
Right.
I could train people how to train people how to use Final Cut Pro, and showing people, you have 10 different ways you could accomplish the same goal, but we kind of stuck to a really nice curriculum that we had. And I had to learn Logic as well as being a certified Apple trainer, and their whole pro suite of tools. And I was just really dumbfounded by Logic of how awesome that was as a music creation tool. Because I grew up, my brothers were in a band and played musicians since I grew up, and my dad had bought them a lot of analog gear. We had 8-track recorder, 4-track Tascam. I don't know if you remember Chroma Polaris keyboard. Nobody knows that name, but it was like the best one to buy. My dad's like, okay, get it for my kids. But my brothers didn't read any of the manuals at all. At all. And I was like 8 years old, and I get in there and start playing with stuff. I'm reading things like when the term MIDI came out, and I'm playing with this gear and had that analog gear to play with. I think that's where my tech side of me came in. And I was also gravitating towards the video camera and stuff. But there was always, like you said, there's a bunch of different ways that you can go about creating a product, and you have these students. That's why I was curious to know, is it a strict, rigid curriculum, or is it, here's what we're teaching about music production, and you're using this, and you're using that, and you're using that, and there's a lot of different pathways that they could choose.
Yeah, I basically like I just want everybody to just to make it easier and more fun with everyone, and to like encourage everyone's individual stuff, because there's no sense for me to make everyone kind of mold together. Um, and yeah, I was going to say also earlier, we're in the music school, which is Herb Alpert School of Music, but there's many departments in there, but there's some cross. So I'm in music technology, but we also have like experimental sound practice, and then there's composer performer, or did I get that right? And yes, but so it's all sort of separate. But yeah, it's all sort of joined, and there's sort of, yeah, it's more or less the same, but they've sort of separated all. But yeah, so one class is this more production thing, that was my kind of intro into figuring out a syllabus of like, oh wow, I've been asked to do this, like what am I going to do? So it's all kind of very personal. It's like stuff that I use. I feel like it's a bit like Mr. Miyagi, and then in the end you're like, oh shit, I can do all this stuff now. And then one is kind of based more on live performance. That's another class. And then one is like a history class of like electronic dance music. So different
Awesome.
things. Yeah.
I was wondering, in your class, and you can attest to this because you've been producing music for a long time, but producing music stands synonymous with spending countless hours behind a computer or behind the gear sculpting beats. What do you do in your free time to stay fit? And do you suggest to your students that they need to take time away from the desktop, from the computer? And what's that suggestion you tell them to go do?
That's a great point that I'm going to start implementing. A lot of them are much younger, so I feel they're still kind of bulletproof. I think at our age, if I don't go out do something daily, I'm going to have problems. I mean, especially to your point of like being sitting, or just being sort of not even playing an instrument, right? Like during different times, I'm a drummer, which can be fairly aerobic. But if you're just kind of programming, you're like just kind of couch potato. So I mean, yeah, I think every day, yeah, it's just it'll all kind of add up right through the years. So like, it's important for me to either go for a run or a bike or lift heavy things or something every day just to stay, all those hours that aren't, I mean, we should be moving hours and hours and hours per day and, who knows how many steps. So as a bedroom producer, it's definitely easy to just get sucked in and the whole day goes by before you've kind of like put in 30 steps. So yeah, it's definitely something interesting and important to implement. So I'm gonna steal that from you and put it in the syllabus, like maybe the
DJ
last 30
sessions. I
minutes
want
of
credit
class
for
will just
that.
go out for calisthenics.
Part of your curriculum, they also have to watch one episode of the DJ sessions.
Yeah, that too. Or weekly. I think weekly is a good idea.
Weekly, daily,
Um,
live. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
but I think to your point, another thing about the to kind of like get outside if you can. I know some. I mean, right now it's like the opposite of the weather problems people usually have, but it's super hot out right now, so there's no way to go outside and do crazy physical activity. But I think like for myself, you always hear of it's this meditative thing, right? And for me, that's where a lot of ideas come from. So if I like wake up, go out in the morning, all of a sudden like there's a thing hovering, and it's like that's cool. Where did that come from? But it's just kind of it is that meditative time. So I think not just for having a healthy lifestyle, but also for brain health and ideas, it really helps to. I don't know why. It just it's been I think proven to go hand in hand. So for me, a lot of inspiration comes out of these times where it's like because you're not thinking about all these daily problems or tech things, you're focused on a task, and then these things can just kind of come out of the universe and just come into your head. So
Yeah, I recently just got involved in a relationship, and I was telling my girlfriend last night I'm finished with work, and she's like, "What do you want to do?" And I say, "Whatever you want to do. I don't want to make any decisions. Let's go do what you." She goes, "You mean we can go to the beach and go swimming, play with my dog?" And yes, let's go. Let's get some sunshine. Let's get out in the park. Let's go for a walk. We'll go to the grocery store. We'll go buy dinner. Just take me away from the computer. And I even said, the one thing I don't bring my computer with me when I come over to your place is I'll be tempted to work. And, I will jump on that computer. I will work till 2 in the morning. It's nice that I don't view it as a distraction. I view it as a strength that it is something to do that is not work related. Even though while we're walking down the path, I'm telling her about my work day and making notes on my phone to remind me like, oh, that's a good idea. I got to remember that. But, to disconnect, there is something about pushing it. Burning the midnight oil is great, but I myself have burnt out 4 times. I mean, the last time I burnt out, I think was probably around 2016, 2017. But I had burned out a series of times before that because I was just so into everything and I didn't have a schedule. I wasn't following my to-do lists. Now I have people that help me out. I have, somebody out of the UK. I got somebody out of New York. I got somebody out of Thailand. I got somebody out of Seattle. I have a developer in Brazil, like a developer in Germany, that's really helping to drive my brand. So I'm not having to do all this work too. And it's not all on me. And like a friend of mine said when I was developing our virtual reality nightclubs, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And I was like, I want to do it all myself. And he goes, Darren, just pay somebody, find somebody, just pay them, find what, and I did. And I found somebody who was a developer. I was just on a call with her today. What would have taken me probably 3 to 4 months, she literally did in less than 24 hours. When I say less than 24 hours, I sent it to her. It was up within like 2 hours. I'm like, you're my developer. You're my go-to person. So networking and finding people that can help, or again, that you don't put all the weight on yourself. But as an independent artist, that does happen. You aren't just the DJ or you aren't just the producer. You're also your marketing, your PR, your social media consultant, your graphic designer. Let's go your NFT creator. What else could we throw on there that you might talk to a student about in electronic music production is how many hats you're going to have to wear. until you pick it up, unless you have a bunch of money to throw at this, which a lot of people don't, and that's just the truth. And so, um, but finding the right people you can work with is, I think, a key. I think that's the one thing that helps me stay mentally fit, because there's mentally fit and there's physically fit, so
I
um,
think to your point,
mhm.
schools also is a great opportunity where I always kind of encourage them to make contacts and contacts outside of the department because, like, yeah, it's not, it's another thing about these modern times where, like, as you say, everyone is expected to do all these things themselves. And it's like, look, if you make all these friends that you can collaborate with, whether it's a graphics person or somebody's just like super good at all the social stuff, or somebody's can build websites super, just all this stuff. Like I was like, eventually you're all gonna graduate to new levels, and somebody's gonna be like the president of a publishing company, and somebody's gonna be like the publicist at this big thing, and you'll have those connections, and it'll just still be like this free flowing thing without needing to, like, you can exchange things, so you don't have to like have these huge budgets for things. And even if you're not in an environment like that, just obviously linking up online is quite possible too. So it's good to delegate these different duties onto to different people and have something to trade them. And
It's funny you bring that up, because I was just interviewing Swedish Eagle.
oh
Swedish,
yeah, he's awesome. Old
yeah.
friend. What an awesome guy, man.
Just interviewed him last week, and he was talking to me about a story about. He goes, I just mentioned something about Dave Dresden being one of the first celebrity DJs that was on the DJ sessions and playing in my bedroom, and how that's how the idea for the DJ sessions went. Psh, after that. And he goes, "Oh yeah, Dave, I remember. Let me tell you a story." And he tells me about this story about how Dave Dresden used to work for him, in networking and making that, and then Dave's right. Dave actually, they took him to, I think they took him to Winter Music Conference. They took him to some conference, and that's where Dave and Gabriel met and just hit it off and became like best friends. And then it became, Gabriel and Dresden, and it was like, and it just was an awesome story. And again, I think that's a key point for students to know. I mean, I've gone to school twice. I have 228 credits, and I haven't signed up on my degree yet. But school was a great place to network and meet other like-minded students,
Yeah, I think that's the
and
main thing
yeah, and
is
instructors, that can maybe say, "Oh, hey, I know this person outside that may," or
totally.
there's a nightlife or a joint or a meetup group that I think you would facilitate something in networking. Because if you're just there and you're in front of your computer and you're doing this and you're getting
Yeah, you
great, I
could
think
do
you're
that at
missing the
home.
experience. Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So awesome stuff there. So how do you balance your DJ career with the other obligations that you have in life? Because there's something I want to touch on here. And I saw this on the socials. And when I first saw it, I saw this obligation that you have in your life. And I guess you are still, it's part of your DJ career. But first of all, separating the entertainment side from the business side of your life. How do you balance that?
Oh gosh, I mean, I guess it's just stuff I've picked up over the years. The thing about it is like feeling guilty about not wanting to do something, especially when it's sort of like seems required. I think that's a really tough lesson to learn. Um, I used to just go on these some crazy tours because I thought I'd upset somebody for not going. Just, I mean, obviously it's a great opportunity and income, but just kind of learning how to set my parameters was a really much harder than I realized thing to get right. So now I really feel like it's okay. I can make my own rules, and I realize that, like, all these rules that I set for myself, um, it's just going to be a better quality of life, right? Like if I'm not super excited about doing something and then I'm doing it, then I'm hating doing it the entire time. And then, everybody can kind of tell that I'm hating it. And then, so just to take that out of the equation, and then it takes some practice like everything else. And I've always been kind of interested in the majority of a lot of the sort of business things and trying to figure that out. I have some friends that just do none of that, which I think is also completely fine. Because I mean, if you just want to be creative, I think that's a very streamlined way to do it. Um, so yeah, it really comes down to managing, building anxiety and quality of life, and having time for things. I think is just like really important. Yeah.
Hmm. I'm a huge foodie, so I love to cook. And if you go to our TikTok right now, it hasn't been really worked out as the DJ Sessions brand. There's more me making cooking videos, and I don't know if you've gotten into TikTok yet, but that's a rabbit
Not yet.
hole. It's interesting. It's fun. But I'm literally producing little short films. Like,
Right.
and when I'm cooking, I have to produce that in the order that I'm cooking. So I'm here taking a shot. I'm here taking a shot. Prep this, take a shot. You know, and that's still me working in the kitchen. But I try to make light of that. But food, I think, is one of my favorite things, and spending time with my wonderful girlfriend. She's amazing. But yeah, taking time to balance that work life balance, is something that I think is also is key. But speaking of work and on the music side of things, I came across this wonderful little word that it was reading. It's actually a title. It's the name of something that you do. And I hope I pronounce this correctly, but it's Wajada?
Oh, Wahada. Yeah.
Wahada.
I
Wahada.
guess because it's a
Get these J's
mashup of
wrong.
yeah, I know. Sorry, it's a mashup of Watts and Tejada, so it's Wahada.
Yeah, I,
Um,
I was so I was coming across. I see this post before I know what Wahada is, and I just see this at the Brooklyn Mirage, and it was in May, and I went, okay. First of all, the first time I ever went to the Brooklyn Mirage was last year. First time I ever went to New York as an adult was last year. I went to go see one of our resident DJs, Lucy Tudor, open for Lane 8 and Lil Youth. And I did not know what to expect. I had only read the website specs, the website of the club. But when I got to the Brooklyn Mirage, I fell in love with that place. I said, this is what a nightclub should be. I have not traveled too much, and I've not gone too far out of Seattle. Been to a few clubs in LA and in Vancouver, different areas, but nothing like that experience. And when I saw you at the Mirage, I had my first question typed up was, "Oh wow! So did you actually go see Wahada at the Brooklyn Mirage?" And then I started doing my research. I go, "He is Wahada. They are Wahada." So what was that experience like playing at the Brooklyn Mirage? And what's it
yeah,
like working with Reggie?
yeah. I mean, I'll
There's
talk about the
two-part
Mirage
question.
first. Like the Mirage is the outdoor part, and Avant
Yeah.
Gardener is the inside
Yep.
room. So both have a pretty large capacity. I don't think it's someone that someone Billy, who's part of City Fox, I think has a big part to do with it, or certain events. So I met him playing gigs in Europe because he was living in Switzerland. He's also I'm half Austrian. I think he's half full Austrian. Anyway, so we had these connections. But yeah, I've gotten to play inside and outside a handful of times now, and it's really cool because it's great when a place is so advanced technologically and staff wise, but everybody's just like on their game and everything's like really smooth and this place is just it's just kind of perfect like that because there's no surprises and everything is just taken care of like really 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 smooth, especially for like an event that size to feel like it's like the stress level of a 20-person club, at least from my perspective. It's just very very chill and everything. And I don't know if they've added this since you've been there, but the Mirage part has added a 180 very very tall LED wall, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, I mean
Awesome.
that place is I think for the States it's one of the premier places that I'm sure will be a model that others will follow because it's almost like festival scale, but it's just a
Mhm.
club. It's pretty darn cool.
I get goosebumps. I keep thinking about it. I literally get goosebumps thinking about how amazing that place is. And like you
Yeah, and
said, I
it's
think
fun
it'll be the same.
it's fun for us to. I mean, it's just have a opportunity to play a crowd that size. That's not a festival. So
Mhm.
Pretty darn cool. Yeah,
I
working
remember.
with Reggie.
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to get into that. Yeah, you kind of mentioned, but
Yeah.
uh, we had a lot of mutual friends, so we find it was just kind of long story short. It was inevitable that we linked up, and even when we linked up, I didn't really like this. There's nothing weirder than somebody you don't really know. It's like, yeah, do you want to go jam? It's like not really, dude. I don't really know you. So I kind of like I was like, everybody's trying to work with this guy, so we're just gonna hang. We have a lot of mutual friends, but then it just kind of got to be a bummer that we weren't trying anything. So anyway, long story short, so I think it's been like 5 or 6 years. We were recording tons of stuff. I wasn't even there weren't even any plans to release it. It was just I don't know. It was just this zone that we were in, and then finally we kind of got the ball rolling. But it's really cool for me because I'm obviously a bit more of an introvert, and it's great to pull off these shows and have this front man who can get a whole place, no matter how big or small, like singing and chanting and just involved. And the other thing is like feeling good. He kind of like makes people feel good to be there, which I think is like a special gift he has, and people just love him. And it's great for me because I can just be in the corner pushing buttons, and it's fine. Nobody's looking at me. Apart from the couple of times he's like, everybody, this is John, which is great. So I feel like it's this great balance where I can just be like really technical and really look after things, and he's just a proper entertainer, which I can make some tunes, but I'm not sure if I'm a proper entertainer, especially these days, talking about the sort of level that big DJs have to be on. So um, it's this great balance. We just kind of, without even saying anything, we delegate these jobs to each other that just come natural, and it fits together. And I think it's still when I talked to Reggie about it, he's like, well, it might just be like our sixth album is going to be the one, and then everybody's going to be like, whoa, they have five more albums. So we're kind of in it for the long haul because now we've had two full lengths and a 5-song EP along with some other bits here and there. So and we're working on some new things now. So it's just like it's just something really we enjoy doing, whether we're putting stuff out or not. But then there are like wild opportunities on my side that come along with it. Like we did Conan and the James Corden show, which is not something I would usually be performing on. So um, it's super cool, and we're like he's one of my best friends, and he's my big bro, and he's awesome, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a little research on him. Obviously, he lived a few different places before he came to
Yeah, and
Seattle.
Seattle,
And he got
long
his start
time
in
in
Seattle
Seattle.
at the Art Institute in Cornish, at 18 years old. So always got to give a shout out to a Seattleite. But what I love the most is I'm going on the SoundCloud, looking up on Wahada. And the first track, it wasn't in order of the album. The last one you just released about 6 months ago. What was the title of that one?
Do you even care anymore?
Do you even care anymore? And I saw the cover was kind of like this Minecraft. Was that a Minecraft kind of theme there going there? Did you
Kind of.
ever
It's
do
this
any?
local artist, Mike Manor. He
Okay,
made a video for us, and then those were like stills pulled out of the video, and that's like his style. He does a lot of really cool projects. So yeah, everyone has kind of different perspectives on it, and some friends will ask like, "Oh, is that an NFT?" Or I was like, "Oh,
that,
yeah, no, it's just Mike Manor. He's the man. He did this cool thing, brought us
that's
to life. I mean, that's another opportunity. Like, how often do I get to be a cartoon, right? So pretty
it's
cool.
awesome. Yeah, and the first track that comes up, this hits my heart. The first track that comes up on SoundCloud is Killer.
Oh, awesome.
And all of a sudden I'm just don't. I'm like, okay, is this gonna be a sample? And it just goes right into the track, and I'm just like, I love that original. I
No,
love that song
that's
so
so
much. I
awesome.
love the version that George Michael does on the Freedom '90 album.
I never heard that one,
I'm
but I
just
think a lot of people are covering the Seal version, where it's very
that's
important to me that it's always focused that it's Adamski,
yeah,
who came to the Brooklyn Mirage gig, and it was like super goosebumps because he was like, yeah, maybe I'm making this my own now, but he seemed to have a high appreciation for our cover, and it was very important to me that it was like And we actually made this a long time ago. We were looking to do something with it for a while, and I think because that tune, it was like the Seal version hit stateside more, but the Adamski version was a number one in the UK, and it was, and not even, I mean, there was so much history to it, but it was an instrumental for a long time, and he would play it live until he had his, his club buddy Seal come and do some vocals, and he was like, "Dang, this guy can sing," and then the rest is history. But that original version, and I remember telling Adam, like, the big synth in there is the Ensoniq SQ80, and I remember being like, "I didn't use an SQ80, man," and he was like, "I don't care," but it was like, just, it's so rare to do a cover for me that, like, it was just very important that, like, to, because bringing Reggie in the mix, I think one thing I was going to say is people are still kind of learning that this is like, because he's one of the biggest comedians out there. Even though he also, his live shows are more music based, like he's kind of he makes his own thing, right? But I think it still takes a little while to realize, like, he will bring some of his personality to it, but it's not Reggie being funny. It's like his first love. He had many bands and projects in Seattle, like just very music focused. So I think he appreciates being a serious musician, but it takes some time for people to go like, "Oh, this is like a serious thing." So especially like trying to honor a track like that, which is, one of the tracks that made me want to do what I do. And part of that reason was like, I don't think it's very nervous to release that. And I just got a random message from Adam that was like, I love your version of the song, which was like, okay, I can just retire now. So, but for anybody who doesn't know that version, check out Adamski Killer featuring Seal. It came out I believe in '89, and it like changed music history. But anyway, that was I'm so glad that you feel something and gravitate to that track, because yeah, I feel it's a lesser known fact that in the States that this tune was so big and influential, and that it's not to take it away from Trevor Horn, but just that there is a vibe, I'm sure you can agree with, to that original Adamski production. And it just is like, even though there were other tunes at the time with really good vocals, there's just something there. And I think there's something in that one that doesn't show up in the Trevor Horn version. And then I don't know what shows up in our version, but I think you get, for somebody like Reggie to like come at it and just really, to really sing it, and to get those goosebumps from Reggie in my room, like, not just kind of like, oh, I'm going to have a singer on this. So we would like to do more of that stuff, just to take, the only issue with it is Reggie is such an improvisational artist. We actually played it out once. There's a little YouTube clip somebody did from a Dirty Bird barbecue that happened here in LA, but we tried to play it a couple times, but basically like we have to print out the vocals, which I guess isn't so weird. A lot of artists are reading from teleprompters, but Reggie just wants to improvise. So to kind of put it in a different zone where it's like, okay, now we have an arrangement and we got to do the song, so we don't play it. I'd love to play it more, but we just don't play it that much because our shows are a bit more improv. But yeah, I love that we finally got to put that out. And I think it's definitely something to be discovered still. It didn't make the rounds quite as I hoped, but it's there for people to. And obviously, but our only really intention is like, we love this song. It's very special, but the main objective here is we love the song and we tried to perform it, but go listen to the real one. Like that's really, I think that's the point of doing a cover. Like, this song inspired me so much that, cool, you found what I was doing, but like, go listen to it if you haven't heard it, or if you've heard it, listen, get reacquainted. So that's, I think for me, that's the real goal of doing a cover like that. And then to have, Adam be a supporter is bananas to me. It's like, and he wants to maybe do something. I'm just like, what? Like, that's the thing of like doing this for so long, and like that old quote of like, never meet your heroes. It's like, well, some are worth meeting. Like now, one of my other big influences is Orbital, and I've got a remix coming out of Impact, which is my favorite tunes ever. And, so, and working with the Plaid guys a lot. So yeah, I mean, just this, I think this lifelong music journey. I think that's the best part. I think everybody in my life I've met, including my wife, it was all part of this music journey. Like none of it would exist without feeling the way I do music and trying to put myself out there and creating and just being part of it. So it's pretty wild when you put it all together, you know.
And yeah, I have that Adamski version pulled up with Seal. I'm going to be listening to it right after the show. But
Nice.
you mentioned the musical journey, and part of that journey is entertaining others. When you're not entertaining others, what do you do to entertain yourself?
Well, I find time with my wife and with my friends is really important. Like I feel like that's kind of like my reward for, especially like if I'm commissioned to do something that like is fine, but you know I don't really want to be doing it anymore. Like my reward is to have time with somebody that's important to me. So that and I've got a few hobbies, and again, like trying to get outside every day or something like that. So um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Pretty simple stuff, but that's kind of the balance that I have there.
Awesome. John, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know we're gonna wrap things up here. Is there anything else you want to let our DJ Sessions fans know about before we let you get going?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I'm again check out the Wahada version of Killer, or check out all our stuff if you don't know. I got a project with Reggie Watts that's pretty fun and exciting, and also I got to remix one of my heroes, Orbital. So my remix of Impact is part of their 30 something collection, which I believe is out July 17th. So check that out.
Awesome. And John, again, where can people find out more information about you and what you got going on so we know when all that's coming out?
For sure. So I think most of my kind of updates and detail will be on my Instagram, which is John Tejada Official. There's also a Facebook page with the same handle, John Tejada Official. On Twitter, you can find me just under John Tejada. And then on SoundCloud, it's under Palette Recordings. Yeah, and that would be how to keep up with what I'm up to.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for coming on the DJ Sessions. It was a pleasure having you. We'll be following back up with you over the course of the next 6 months every year. We like to stay in contact with
Yeah, that'd
everyone
be
that we bring on
great.
the show.
I'd love to do a show. As much as we talked about everybody figuring out their streaming, I never got it to a place where it was, just like super smooth. So I'll still work on that. So we'll get that for the next time.
Well, one of my rules was when I started this journey, even when I was doing my television series ITV or independent television and then moving that into the DJ sessions, was that I would always promise to be for the community and out there for the to basically share the knowledge that I've given. I don't try to hoard the knowledge that I know. I will say I give away 90%, 98% of the information I will give away freely, willingly, to somebody who's actually making an effort, but there's that 2% of information I just won't give away, which is usually my private Rolodex or email list. Like, how do I get this
Yeah.
contact at Twitch, or how do I get
No,
this
yeah.
contact? Like, I'm sorry, I can't, you can go knock on the doors and figure that one out. I'm not just going to give you the keys to the kingdom, or, how can I look at your licensing contracts? No. We spend thousands of dollars with our lawyers to get these things created and in place. No. But you can go hire a lawyer and figure out how much it's going to cost. But yeah, on that level, if you ever do need any advice, feel free to hit me up. We're always here. And if you're out there on DJ Sessions land watching the show, we're always here to help you out. If you got a question about something, just do that. But John, again, thank you for coming on the DJ Sessions this afternoon.
Thanks so much, Darren. It's super fun, man.
Absolutely. On that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. You'll find all our socials there, the TikTok with the cooking videos, our Instagrams, our Twitters, that meta thing, but really all of our content with news, events, interviews. Oh, check us out. We're getting ready to launch on Roku, Fire, Google Play, Apple TV. And of course, we're always on Twitch for your viewing pleasure when we go live. This is the DJ Sessions Virtual Sessions. I'm Darren. That's John Tejada coming in from Los Angeles, and I'm in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington. And remember, at the DJ Sessions, the music never stops.